Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
So I want to ask you a couple of questions and think about this. Does this resonate with you? Do you feel kind of stuck? You wonder, how long has this been going on in my life? How did I get this way? Is things ever going to change? Things are good potentially, but inside there's more for you, whether that's in relationships, your work, whatever it might be. Maybe it's time for therapy and the right kind of therapist. Fortunately, there's a much more open view of therapy now than there was, back in the day where people would look at somebody and say, "Oh, you're going to a therapist. Wow, what's going on there?" Now it's like, wow, it's like talking to a friend. Got a great one for you. And he helps couples navigate marriage and relationships, individuals as well. It's great to have him here. Yonah Fenton joins us on the program. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Good to have you here. What do you hear mostly from people that they're dealing with today? Is it a lot of anxiety? Is it depression? What's the overwhelming thing that you find that most people have challenges with?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think it certainly depends on the situation, or it's certainly situational in that sense. There's a lot of anxiety going on. That's probably in general with the individual clients I serve. Depression, a lot of stage of life challenges that people go through, a lot of relationship issues I
Mhm.
see. And again, it really depends on who I'm working with, right? Whether it be a adult male or a couple or adolescent.
Let's focus on relationships, couples.
Yes.
We'll go in all directions here, individuals after that. But when it comes to the relationship, is it mostly the cliche what people say, communication? You have to communicate better. Is that really the thing?
I think it is the thing, but I think that comes with a little asterisk or a caveat, and that is that what does that mean? Um, right? Communication at the end of the day is the way we connect with one another, and if we're not communicating, that means we're not connecting. And yeah, is
Mm.
communication the problem? Yes. So if, let's say there's an affair or something, you could boil that down to a communication problem, right? We're not communicating in a way that we feel connected in our relationship. If we're just having a hard time getting along, we're fighting about little things. Again, that's a communication problem. So yes, I do think it is still boils down to communication, but I think that communication has to be taken in a broader sense, which really means a way to connect with one another.
Why is it that in a partnership, marriage, couples, whatever that relationship is, why does it change years later? It was good in the beginning, and now it's not so good anymore. What goes on there?
Yeah, Steve, that's a great question too. I think we change. We evolve as human beings. We evolve as individuals throughout our lives. We evolve as a couple,
Mm.
and we're not the same person necessarily. Uh, you know, hopefully not the same person 10, 20 years down the road we were when we first got married. And I think in an ideal relationship, 10, 20 years down the road, you're looking at your relationship and saying, this is way better than it was when we first started. Might have had the same fireworks, but I feel so much closer and so much more connected, going back to that word, and so
Mm.
much more free. I think oftentimes in the beginning of a relationship, we're very dancing around, we should not try not to upset one another, try not to trigger one another. And it's great, right? We have a lot of fun, but we're also not really being ourselves.
Yeah.
I think the more we grow up, the more we grow into ourselves, the more we grow into our relationship, the more open we can be with one another.
I think it's very true. Like we
Yeah,
we have a mask on, a lot of times in the relationship. There's a song by Billy Joel. I play music on the radio, have since I was a kid, literally,
yeah,
still do. And music downloads. And what you just said, there's a song called The Stranger by Billy Joel.
huh?
And basically it's that. Like we put a mask on, you come home, you don't even know who this person is because you have a mask on. Um, do you feel this is what I've heard, and like you said, that things change,
Hmm.
that we reevaluate our lives basically every 5 years. We take a look, so what's going on here? Relationships, jobs, and everything. And then they have that thing called the 7 year itch.
Mm.
And then if you add 2 years onto that, that's the time it takes you to take action if you're going to. And that's where you get that 7 year itch or you change the relationship. Gotta tell you, I don't try to read into it, but I've looked at every relationship I've been in, and every 7 years there was a pinnacle point. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true, but what are your thoughts in terms of that every 5 years we reevaluate, basically every five we reevaluate our lives?
Yeah, no, that's actually a really interesting point. I just was working with someone recently and she actually brought that up. She said she's noticed that she only stays at jobs for 5 years at a time.
Wow.
And she'll like and she just realized that it's always 5 years for some reason.
Hmm.
That's interesting, and I think I've also, yeah, I think there is something to that 5 year mark, right? We've finally kind of settled in. The excitement is kind of over.
Yeah.
Now we're kind of that like, do we really want this? Do we really like it? Right? Are we reevaluating ourselves? Yeah. I think there is something to that actually, Steve.
And I heard that years ago, and I didn't process it until I thought about it, in
Yeah.
my life situations. Another question on the couple situation. Do you feel, Yonah, that a lot of times, then we call it baggage. We bring baggage into the relationship. I always heard that, and I never, yeah, you understand, you have a, failed relationship here. It's still in your emotional backpack, if you will. Then you brought it into a new relationship. You can't get rid of it. It's part of your
Mhm.
life. But when I look deeper into it in my journey, I realized that the baggage is also what you're carrying even from your childhood, which dictates the way you act today. So with those partnerships, those relationships, those couples, the communication is key, sure. But do you feel that it's things that we didn't resolve from our childhood, we're bringing into the relationship, both sides, and it works, and then it doesn't work? Does that have a bearing on what's going on?
Absolutely. I think absolutely it does. And I think what you're getting to now is really the core of the
Right.
problem.
Deep
Right.
deep point alert. Deep point alert.
Yeah,
Just saying. Just
exactly.
yeah.
Right? Like when you do this thing, it always, activates me or triggers me to use that, kind of common term. And it's happening for a reason,
Yeah.
right? There is something that I'm trying to, resolve and I'm getting activated by because you're doing something that's bringing something out in me, right? And I think that in the work with couples, that's really where it turns, right? If
Yeah.
I'm snapping at you and saying it's your fault that I feel a certain way,
Mm.
then that is a classic example of where a couple starts struggling. And then you're going to come back to me at one of two ways, right? You're going to fight back in all likelihood, or you're just going to retreat and say, I'm going to shut down and step out, right?
Yes.
Well, and the sooner a couple realizes that I'm reacting that way, not, I mean, yes, because of what you did, but more because of my own history and what you're bringing up for me at this moment, the more we can make that present, that's really what the conversations can start being about and how we can start connecting on a deeper level. So, yes, I think marriages, families are really a place where we can't avoid it, right? We're gonna get activated by stuff that came up in our childhood, and
Yeah.
we can hopefully work through it together.
But until you realize it, there's nothing going to change. I know somebody, I'll keep this really short. I know
Sure.
somebody um, getting divorced, and his wife just one day said, I want to end this. Got kids, long-term relationship. Came out of nowhere. And then when he started tracing it back and everything that was going on, he realized that, and I know the family, so I know that the dynamics and everything going on there. Um, she pulled the plug on the relationship just after her father passed away. And then he realized that she was cheating while her father was declining in health. And then when it was all said and done, he realized that her father did the same thing to her and her family. Just literally just one day walked away and he cheated. And and here's the cherry on top of the story.
Mhm.
Um, the man she's with now, because he shared it with me, looks just like her father. I mean, I don't want to say classic, daddy issues, but he's
Right.
also Same ethnic background, same hobbies. It's her father again. He's
It's
back.
uncanny, right?
It's uncanny. It's
Yeah,
uncanny. When he showed me the pictures, I'm like, dude, are you joking? And he's swiping between the two. It's like, no, this is who she's with, and this is her father. And I knew her father. I was close with the
right.
family. So it's to me, that sounds like she didn't resolve issues from the past.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. And that's a great example of it. Sometimes it's even more subtle than that, right? And again, but
Yeah.
it's the people who are able to go there, right? And go to that vulnerable place and be that open with someone, with their partner in the room, right? Which is really the crazy part
Mm,
here. Like the
mm.
person who triggers me the most in the world,
I'm
I am
getting
to go
anxiety
there
just
with
hearing that.
him, right? With him or her. But imagine being able to do that
Yeah.
and have that person look at you and say, wow, like I
Wow.
just want to be there with you for that. I want to be compassionate with that.
That is I'm getting chills. I'm not even kidding. That's a breakthrough moment for a couple. When
Right.
somebody admits, all right, I figured out why I do what I do. It's because of, this happened in my past. Side note, when we talk about the past, we're not talking about necessarily major traumas. It could be
Mhm.
these little things that were floating out there that govern the way you act today. But I almost can't imagine being in a therapy session
Yeah.
with your other half, your partner, and then admitting, you know, that you figured out with your help. Like, talk about a breakthrough. Talk about bringing
Yeah.
a couple closer. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And look at, there's so much there, right? Not only are you sharing that, but you're also sharing why you don't want to share that,
Right.
right? And
Yeah,
like,
you're
and there's so
embarrassed
many
too.
layers there. Yeah, absolutely. And what's behind that embarrassment? Where's that coming from? Right? So there's layers upon layers that, you know, we can try to get to, and then again, always come back to, all right, now share it with her, share it with
Mm,
him, right? And
mm.
see what happens. Like, take that risk.
That's got to be such a liberating moment, a feeling of freedom
Yeah.
where this is who I am. This is who I am. And I'll do what I can to work on who I am, but I'm
Mhm.
letting you know what's going on.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
And this is, and that's really the thing is, when I when I snap back when you do this, right? When I shut down when you do this, when I walk out of the house when you do this, I'm not excusing that behavior, but this is where it's coming from. It's not about you, it's about me.
yeah.
And that's really where they can start taking that turn. Absolutely.
Well, a lot of times somebody, and I'm going to say a lot of times it's the man.
Yeah,
Well, so I don't want to talk about later. I don't want to deal with this right now.
yeah.
Essentially, what he's saying is, I know I got a problem. I don't want to talk about it.
Hmm.
Or I haven't figured out what it is, but I know there's things in me and I haven't figured out what they are, but I don't want to share them with you because I haven't figured it out myself. So how can I verbalize it if I don't even know what it is in my mind?
Yeah,
Uh, but
exactly.
once you figure it out, you must have a lot of those breakthrough moments, aha moments when you work with people.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. It's such a powerful experience. I mean, there's just like these natural, someone is opening up in a way they've never opened up in their lives in a lot of way, oftentimes, right? Especially men, right? There we don't talk about certain things. Like we don't talk about it. Like we're conditioned that way.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
all of a sudden, and then when we've tried in our relationship we weren't successful because you were probably doing it the wrong way, right? Because we were trying to say we're feeling a certain way, and we're showing that by walking out of the room instead of saying how we're feeling, right? So to have that success, and when a couple can connect, I mean, there's like this is physical response. I mean, like tears start coming out, and it's like you can feel it in the room. It's like palpable.
Yeah. It's,
Yeah,
and men are conditioned not to center on men, and I'm not giving excuses here, but
yeah,
how do we grow up? How do we grow up? Parents say, hey, act like a man. Big
right,
boys don't cry. Yeah, man up.
Absolutely.
All right, so let me hide everything I'm feeling because I'm not supposed to. Um, I joined a men's group about 6 months ago on a
Hmm.
whim. Never thought I ever would. Um, we share a lot, and there was, a retreat that we went on, and I'm not going to get into the details of it, but on the third day, we are encouraged to collectively express grief.
Wow.
You have no idea. We'll never forget it.
Hmm.
Um, dark room. That's all I'm going to say. And everybody supported each other. But what a freeing situation to let it all out because it was like, something ready to explode. And that's
Hmm.
what it was like. That's
Yeah.
what it was like. But men need to do that. And again, not to center on men, but
Right.
how did
Right.
this happen for you? How did you have an interest in the mind?
Yeah. Well, great question. For one thing, my parents were both. My mother is a doctor. She's a psychiatrist for
Hmm.
probably almost 50 years now. So I mean, she was getting in the field when most women still weren't even physicians, and not that certainly weren't the stereotype what people think it is to grow up with a psychiatrist as a mother, but she did. She was aware of just the stuff going on, right? That's not necessarily explicit, and it was always an interest of mine. Um, Growing up, I went to school. I am Jewish. I went to Jewish schools and studied, um, the Torah in depth, and there's a lot of philosophy and a lot of just really human stuff in all of
Hmm.
that, and that was a big focus of my study. And frankly, it's the stuff that really spoke to me, and I think there's a combination of that um, in
Yeah.
there, and then
Yeah.
as I got older. I kind of had this meandering route to where I am now, um, which is I find that something a lot of people relate to as well that I work with. Right, it wasn't like I kind of knew what I wanted. I was interested in this, but I didn't know I wanted to do this professionally. And I think just throughout life, I went, I had an or, I went to school. I went to yeshiva, it's called, and then um, I got a rabbinic ordination. Right, I worked as a chaplain in prisons for a short while. Like I really was in this field. I became a teacher, and then I was like, okay, what next? What now? I think it's time to revisit that. And then I really got into this world of psychotherapy, and I got my master's and opened a practice. So where I got here.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm not Jewish. I have lots of friends
yeah,
who are. And in fact, I was just texting with a friend. Her kids were getting ready the temple for another holiday that's coming up.
yeah.
Um,
It's that season.
I can see you starting there and going deep into that because there's a lot of study, there's a lot involved in that. And just to have that aptitude for that, getting you to studying the mind and how it works.
Yeah,
One, I wish I took psychology when I was younger. I dropped
mhm,
out.
yeah,
Well, I don't know why I did. I thought I knew it all. And I was already
yeah.
doing, I was in radio professionally when I was in high school. So I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. But I didn't realize how impactful it could be because I'm fascinated about what we think about, what drives us, all of that. When it
Hmm.
comes to individual therapy, if somebody's in a relationship, is it a good idea to start with yourself instead of, bringing the other half in, work on that part of it? With that, if you can do that, would you say that that's a good start?
Well, it's a very good question because I think it's a matter of dispute, and I think the simple answer is it's always a good idea. Um, I think what you're going to do in individual therapy is talk about your relationship, right? And
Hmm.
and through that talk about yourself. I think that's what happens often. So yeah, it's always a good thing to do. Um, you can do them in conjunction, right? I mean, yeah, I mean, I would suggest that to people, right? I certainly would say you can do that. You can also do is if you really wanted to, is kind of have your two therapists be in touch with each other if you sign the release forms or whatever, and they can get on the same page. So yeah, I think it's a good idea. Yeah, sure.
We always want peace in our life.
Hmm.
I never knew what that was until I realized one day I don't have peace in my life.
Yeah,
Um, and I find that that's one of the most important things. Yes, love, but also peace.
yeah,
And even, growing up back in the day, you see, peace and all that.
yeah.
Um, Once you figure it out, it's like, whoa. Did you always have peace in your life?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. And I think it's really been a journey.
Mm,
Like it is, I for most people, I mean, I didn't have strife in my life, if that's what you mean. But I think peace in the sense of being at peace with myself, um, no, right? And I don't know if I realized it until I got more at peace with myself, right? I
right?
mean, at the end of the
How do you
day,
describe it? How do you describe it? That
yeah,
feeling.
I would go ahead. Sure, I would say it's really being not being controlled by the things that hold you back, right? And uh, and not being resistant to change. I think that to me is what peace means, right? So if I have certain insecurities that hold me back from doing certain things, right?
Mm,
I walk into a room and I just assume no one likes me, right? Well, that just exists in my head. I'm not at
right.
peace.
Right.
I'm supposed to be enjoying this party and I'm not, right? If I'm have my job and I'm not settled and like for some reason I can't ever feel settled, I don't think I'm at peace, but that's all existing inside of me. And the
You
more
have,
I can deal with that and get to what that's really about and then be open to changing it, yeah, then you can be much more at peace.
sort of like a quiet calm,
Yes, absolutely.
and then, I mentioned love, the highest vibration possible, but that's the love for yourself. Like
Hmm.
you just talked about, walking into a room and, people, you think they're judging you. That doesn't happen when you have love of yourself. And it's
Right.
not like ego, like, look at me, I'm walking into a room. Hey, check me out. No,
Yeah.
it's just, I'm good. I'm good. It's all good. Um,
Yeah.
but
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And part of that means being okay with the parts of yourself that you're not okay with.
right.
Right. And like that's part of who I am, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can say that for me and most, you don't find it unless you work with somebody like yourself. Because that was turning point in other modalities, hypnotherapy, whatever works for you.
Hmm.
It's got to start with somebody else to bounce it off of and to realize what's going on and what your goals are too. Yona, how does somebody find you? And can you work with anybody anywhere virtually?
So I'm pretty flexible virtually. I am located physically in New Haven, Connecticut. So I'm mostly, focused on Connecticut. Um, you can find me either at my website, which is www.meaningfullifect.com. I do offer free consultations, and you'll see a button right there on the first page, and you can click that, book a consultation, we can get started that way. You can also always reach out to me just directly by phone, and that's at 203-871-1383. So those are really the two best ways to reach me.
Your secret weapon, in my opinion, after
Yes.
meeting you today, is you are so genuine and so clear, very understandable. Like a lot of times, many of us, like, I don't know, I want to talk to a therapist, going to go too
Yeah.
deep. This is like just like it's like talking to a friend. It's it's blank and awesome. It really
Thank
is.
you, Steve. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
very
Yeah,
genuine.
appreciate that.
Yeah, great having you on here today. And
Yeah,
I think we covered a lot in a very short period of time.
yeah, that was great.
Yeah,
Great questions. Good conversation.
yeah, appreciate it. Thanks again.
Be well.
You too. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.